Hello again and welcome back to our course on Access 2013 Advanced. In this section and the next one we're going to look at Datasheet View. As before, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with Datasheet View and that you've used it to a reasonable extent, and I'm going to concentrate on some of the features that perhaps you may not be aware of, or some of the more advanced features that were introduced with the current version of Access. Now I think it's important to recognize that Datasheet View is not just a tool for somebody with a very simple database, or perhaps a tool to use when you're designing or setting up a database. It's very often the case that users will actually use Datasheet View to maintain data, and in fact you may well provide this as a standard option for users. Datasheet View can also be very useful for querying a database, and you can even use it for doing simple ad hoc reports. So it's important to be familiar with its features. Now I mentioned earlier the movies database that we're going to be using for various exercises on this course. We're also going to use one of the Microsoft Access standard sample databases on this course, and it's the Northwind database that you're probably familiar with. The version that's available is still the 2007 version, but that's perfectly adequate for the purposes of demonstrating some of the tools and techniques on this course. So first thing we're going to do is to make sure you've got a copy of the Northwind database available. If you don't already have one, then it's available as a template from Microsoft. If you've already got it on your start screen, it'll look like this one, Desktop Northwind 2007. And you can use that as a template straight away. If you can't see it, then if you search the templates online for Northwind, it'll be found, and then from that you can select it and it will start to create the database. It may need to download the template. It's quite a big template, so if you're on a slow internet connection it may take a moment or two, but once the download's complete you will see a screen similar to this one. Now of course you'll be familiar with the enable content up here. As far as my installation of Access is concerned, the Microsoft location we've got this from is not a trusted location, so I have to actually tell Access to accept this template. If you've got a trusted location with this template in it, or you're accessing it in some other way, you may not see this warning. You probably will. Click on enable content and then you're invited to log in. Now as I say, be aware this may take slightly longer for you if you don't already have this template downloaded. The login dialog here I'll talk to you about quite a bit later on in the course, but at the moment it gives a list of the employees of this company, and I'm just going to go with the first one and log in. Once I'm logged in to the Northwind database, then if I press the F11 key as usual, I can see the navigation pane on the left, and away we go. What I'm going to do is to save this database. I'm going to save it in my Scratch folder. Now as you can see, I've called the database Northwind Traders Sample Database, and we will be using it from time to time. I want to look now at one of the tables. I want to look at the orders table, and with the orders table you can see the order dates are generally in the year 2006. I'm recording this in early August 2013. Here's a little extra exercise for you. This isn't strictly one of the course exercises, but just to see how your queries are. There are probably only 4 or 5 tables in this database that have a date field in them. How about upgrading all of those dates? Keep the same day and month, or month and day depending on your locale. Keep the same day and month, but what about making them all in the year 2013, or maybe if you're looking at this in 2014. So write a little query that you can adapt to update the dates in any of the tables in this database that need them updated to more current times. What I'll do is I'll save a copy of a typical query to do that in SQL code just as a text file, and it'll be example 3 with the course. So I've been through all of the tables that have dates in them and updated them. I've actually increased them by 88 months, 7 years and 4 months, to make them pretty much contemporaneous with when I'm recording this course. Now when we look at a table in Datasheet view, as I'm sure you know, we have a scroll bar on the right which we can use to scroll through the records. When you use a scroll bar, you get an indicator there which basically counts the records as you scroll through. And as you also undoubtedly know, the size of the scroll bar itself gives you an idea of how many records there are in the table, because the smaller it is, the more records there are. You're told which numbered record the top one is. The records are in primary key sequence, and apart from the vertical scroll bar, there's also a horizontal scroll bar down here that lets you move right and left through the fields of each record. Each record occupies one row. If you intend to do a lot of work in Datasheet view and you intend to use keyboard shortcuts, the online help for Access includes a list of keyboard shortcuts, and they're categorized. One of the categories is navigating in Datasheet view, and you've got 3 main headings under that: going to a specific record, navigating between fields and records, and navigating to another screen of data. The second of those, navigating between fields and records, and it gives you a list of the keyboard shortcuts that can help you move pretty swiftly around Datasheet view if that's the main way that you're navigating through a database and then performing database operations. Now at the moment I'm working with the ribbon collapsed. What I'm going to do is to just expand it and pin it open, and from now on I'm going to keep the ribbon open pretty much all the time because we're going to be using quite a few commands. One of the things you'll frequently want to do in Datasheet view is to find a record. Now I'm going to assume you're familiar with doing find. You've got the find button there, you've got the search box at the bottom, and so on. A couple of things you may not be aware of. If in a particular situation such as this, where I've got the ID of the first record in the table selected, if I bring up the find dialog just by doing Control F, you'll see that's what comes up: find what 238 in the current field. But if I select the whole of that record and bring up the find and replace dialog with Control F, then instead of saying current field, it defaults to current document, which basically means it will look for whatever I type in any field in this table. So if I put as my find what, say syrup, and specify any part of field and click on find next, it will find it even though it's in another field in the table. And another very important thing to remember when you're using the find facility in Access 2013 is that in Access Help there is a list of the wildcard characters that you can use under the topic Examples of Wildcard Characters. And the details of those, it's not just asterisk for any number of characters. You've got some fairly sophisticated options here for using wildcard characters. So make sure that you're familiar with those. Now the other thing you'll need to be able to do is to add records, to change records and delete records, and again I'm going to assume that you're basically familiar with those operations. If you take adding records for example, there are several ways of doing it. As you know, you can go to the end of Datasheet view. You can get there very easily just by clicking on the new button, which will take you down to the end. If you are using an auto-numbered field as the ID, as we are here, then that contains the word new in brackets. You can't actually type anything in there because it's auto-numbered, so do what you like, you won't be able to type anything. As you start to enter the data, so if I wanted to put in a record number here, 149 for example, and then put in a quantity, etc. If at any stage I want to undo that, as you know, I can press the undo button up there and undo what I've done. If you want to save a record part way through, so normally you'd save it by clicking the save button or perhaps clicking in the next record, subject of course to validation rules being met, then to save a record part way through you just click on Shift and Enter. If there is any validation here which is not going to allow you to save that record, you'll get a message like this one. Now I'm sure you're familiar with deleting records in Datasheet view. If you have a single record selected, you can just use the delete button there on the ribbon. If you want to select a number of records, select the first one, hold the shift key down, select the last one, click the delete button, and of course you're given this warning. Once you say yes to a deletion, that's it. You cannot undo a delete operation on those records. In this case, of course, I'm going to say no. So in this section I've done a quick run through of the basics of working in Datasheet View, concentrating hopefully on things that you weren't aware of or more advanced aspects of doing some things. In the next section we're going to look at how to control the display in Datasheet View and how to do some more advanced sorting and filtering operations. So please join me for that.